All good morning, Jayendra Rana here. Topic for our discussion today is burglary insurance. Burglary insurance it may be described as a social device to reduce or eliminate risk of life and property. Under the plan of insurance, a large number of people associate themselves by sharing risk through contributing a small premium attached to individuals. The risk can be insured against life, fire, marine, motor vehicle, and burglary. Any risk contingent upon these may be insured against at a premium commensurate with the risk involved. The general principles of law of contract are applicable to the law of insurance. The contract of insurance is between two parties whereby one party called insurer or the underwriter who undertakes the risk in consideration for a fixed sum insured called premium to pay the other party known as insured to policy or policyholder upon the happening of an uncertain event. Insurance is a contract whereby in return for the payment of premium by the insured, the insurers make good the losses suffered by the insured as a result of the occurrence of the unforeseen events. So the very foundation of law of insurance is that the contract of insurance in any insurance policy is one indemnity, and in case of any loss against which the insured has been insured against, he shall be fully indemnified. This is the fundamental rule governing the principal rule of insurance, and any contention challenging the validity of this rule and denying the assured party indemnity will have to be disregarded and set aside. Therefore, all policies of insurance and general contract of indemnity, all policies of insurance in general contract of indemnity, the character of property insured or the risk inherent on the property are of no consequence. The insurer are only liable to indemnify the insured as per the value of property at the time of policy was taken out. However, there are some exceptions in this rule. In case the insurer agree to pay a fixed sum insured on the happening of a given event for which the insurance policy was taken out, irrespective of whether the assured suffers a loss or not, then the insurance policy ceases to be a contract of indemnity. The contract of burglary insurance are generally contracts of indemnity. This is because the loss caused in case of burglary can generally be ascertained. However, this may not always be the case. If the contract stipulates that the insurer agrees to pay a fixed sum irrespective of the amount of loss caused to the insured, it will not be a contract of indemnity. In such case, a clause added to an insurance policy, it is more beneficial to both parties since the insurer is hedging his risk against the big losses and the insurer is getting a fixed sum on every loss, thus giving him security. Therefore, a contract of indemnity can be defined as an insurance policy in which the value of the property decided for beforehand and is binding against both the assured and the insurer. As far as the meaning and definition of burglary is concerned, the word burglar comes from the two German words Burg means meaning house and laron means thief. So literally the house thief, the Latin word burgare to break open or to commit burglary, from burgus meaning fortress or castle with the word, then passing through French and Middle English with influence from the Latin latro, thief. So it's also called breaking and entering and sometimes housebreaking is an unlawful entry into a building or other location for the purpose of committing an offense. Usually that offense is theft, but most jurisdictions include other within the ambit of burglary. To enrag in the act of burglary is to burgle in British English, a term back formed from the word burglar, or to burglarize in American English. The legal law of burglary says it can be either actual, such as by forcing open a door, or constructive, such as by fraud or threats. So breaking does not require that anything be broken in terms of physical damage occurring. A person who has permission to enter part of a house but not another part commits a breaking and entering. When they use any means to enter a room where they are not permitted, so long as the room was not open to enter. So entering can involve either by physical entry by a person or by a insertion of an instrument to remove property. So insertion of a tool to gain entry may not constitute entering by itself, and there must be a breaking and entering for common law burglary. Breaking without entry or entry without breaking is not sufficient for common law burglary, and the common law required that entry occur as a consequence of the breaking. So house includes a temporarily unoccupied dwelling but not a building, used only occasionally as a habitation. It is the intention to break into a building without any consent with the intent of committing a crime inside. Burglary can be considered as a specific intention of burglar who intentionally entering to building to commit a crime. Burglary is also called breaking or entering or housebreaking. This breaking can include actions such as forcing opening a door or constructive such as by fraud or threats. So it is an unlawful entry into a building or any other location with an intention of committing an offense. Mostly this offense is theft, but sometimes may jurisdiction include others within the ambit of burglary. It is for the sake of insurance. Burglary is something that occurs when your house or office is broken into by force. For instance, the breaking in of a door or a window to get inside the premises is all signs that the house or office was burgled and robbed. It's also the entering of the property of another with intent to commit a crime therein. So the insurance policies are taken against the loss of burglary. Theft have an exhaustive definition of burglary in their respective contexts, but in the absence of precise definition under the law of insurance, recourse must be taken to criminal law to define burglary in terms of theft. And it is an standard rule of interpretation if technical terms are used in a legal document and they have to be given the special meaning, otherwise they have to be given their natural grammatical tendency. But to constitute a loss within the meaning of the policy, it is also a necessary stipulation that the burglary or theft has occurred in order to deprive the assured of the property or valuable permanently. A temporary loss of property would not entitle the assured to recover the value of the property, although it may be a criminal offense. So burglary is the illegal entry of a building with intent to commit a crime, especially theft. Though burglar often involves theft doesn't have to be committed to be charged with this crime, entering into a building with the intention of committing a crime is sufficient to be charged with burglary. A person doesn't have to enter a building forcibly to commit a burglar. Entering through an unlocked door or window can also be viewed as burglary. In the case of theft, burglary usually involves a thief entering a house while the victims are not present and steal their property. So if a thief enters your house and steals your valuable when you are absent, it can be termed as a burglary. So this type of crime does not involve violence. Each state has specific definitions of what constitutes burglary. There are statutes defining certain elements of burglary that must be in place for an individual to be charged with the crime, and such elements generally include unauthorized entry into a structure with intent to commit a crime. So unauthorized breaking and entry. This element of burglary involves a person breaking into or entering a structure using force or without authorization from the owner. Simply creating an access does not fulfill the breaking and entry element, as the offender must physically enter the structure. Even forcibly placing one body part inside the structure can constitute burglary, as this constitutes physical entry into a structure. Means this element of burglary requires the offender to enter housing and building or other types of structures, including garages or sheds. Most states do not include abandoned building under the definition of building and a structure when considering burglary charges. Most often, entering an abandoned building is classified as trespassing. Intent to commit a crime. The intent of burglary requires the offender to have intent to commit a crime inside the structure they have entered. Such a crime may include anything from theft or fraud to assault. Aggravated burglary. It is the same as a regular burglary, except for one key difference, and it means if an individual breaks into a home with the intent to steal or sexually assault someone, this is enough for the individual to charge with aggravated burglary. Night time, that is defined as hours between half an hour after sunset and half an hour before sunrise. So typically this element is expressed as the intent to commit a felony therein. The use of the word therein adds nothing, and certainly does not limit the scope of burglary to those wrongdoers who break and enter a dwelling intending to commit a felony on the premises. So the situs of the felony does not matter, and burglary occurs if the wrongdoer intended to commit a felony at the time they broke and entered. As far as theft is concerned, in common usage, theft is the taking of another person's property or services without that person's permission, to consent with the intent to deprive the rightful owner of it. The word is also used as an informal shorthand term for some crimes against property, such as burglary, embezzlement, larceny, looting, robbery, shoplifting, library theft and fraud, obtaining money under false pretenses. So in some jurisdictions, theft is considered to be synonymous with larceny, and others, theft has replaced larceny. Someone who carries out an act of or makes a career of theft is known as the thief. So the act of theft is also known by other terms such as stealing, thieving, and fleecing. So this is the legal status of burglary. Thank you.